The stars had watched the Galactic Dominion conquer worlds for 10,000 years. 12 powerful species had joined together long ago, and they had never lost a war. They moved from planet to planet, system to system, taking everything they wanted. Over 200 worlds had fallen to them. Some species surrendered quickly. Others fought back. It did not matter. The result was always the same. No one had ever beaten the Dominion fleet. Commander Vorath stood on the bridge of his massive flagship, the Eternal Conquest. He was a tall creature with gray skin and 4 arms. His species, the Vethani, had led the Dominion for 3,000 years. Vorath himself had conquered 11 worlds. He had watched civilizations burn. He had heard the screams of entire species begging for mercy. Today he had received new orders. A small blue planet in a quiet corner of the galaxy had caught the Dominion's attention. The planet was called Earth, and its people called themselves humans. Vorath had read the intelligence reports with amusement. Humans were weak. They fought among themselves constantly. They had only discovered space travel 200 years ago. They had only sent their first ships beyond their own solar system 50 years ago. They were children playing with toys they did not understand. The conquest would take perhaps 1 week, maybe less. 3,000 Dominion warships dropped out of hyperspace near the gas giant the humans called Jupiter. Each ship was kilometers long, bristling with weapons that could crack planets in half. Together, they formed the largest invasion fleet the Dominion had sent in 500 years. Vorath wanted to send a message. He wanted the galaxy to remember what happened to species that expanded into Dominion territory without permission. On Earth, alarms began screaming in defense centers across the planet. Admiral Park Do-yan was the first to see the sensor data. He sat in the command center of the United Earth Defense Force, a massive underground facility built beneath the mountains of Korea. Screens around him showed 3,000 red dots appearing near Jupiter. Do-hyun was 62 years old. His hair was gray, and his face was lined with worry and experience. He had spent his entire adult life preparing for this moment. Now it was here, and he felt strangely calm. He picked up his phone and called President Kim Yuna. Yuna was in her office in Geneva when the call came. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and a sharper mind. 5 years ago, the nations of Earth had finally put aside their differences and formed a single government. Yuna had been elected as its first leader. Most people thought the unification was about economics, or peace, or progress. Only a few knew the real reason. 50 years ago, human scientists had detected strange signals from deep space. They had decoded those signals and learned a terrible truth. The Galactic Dominion existed, and it was expanding toward Earth at their current speed. They would arrive within a human lifetime. The governments of Earth had made a choice. They could wait and hope the Dominion would pass them by, or they could prepare. They chose to prepare. In secret, humanity had built weapons. They had designed ships. They had studied every piece of Dominion communication they could intercept. They had watched the Dominion conquer other species and learned from every battle. They had unified their planet not for peace, but for survival. Yuna listened to Do-yun's report without interrupting. When he finished, she asked one question: "Are we ready?" "We've been ready for 20 years, Do-yan replied. "We were just waiting for them to arrive." The Dominion broadcast their standard ultimatum to Earth. Every screen on the planet showed Commander Vorath's face as he delivered his message. His voice was translated into every human language simultaneously. "People of Earth," Vorath said, "you have expanded into territory claimed by the Galactic Dominion. This is a crime. You have 1 planetary rotation to surrender your world unconditionally. Your leaders will be executed. Your military will be dismantled. Your population will serve the Dominion. If you do not surrender, your planet will be destroyed, and your species will be erased from existence. This is not a negotiation. This is your only warning." The transmission ended. Across Earth, people panicked. Some ran to shelters. Some prayed. Some held their families and waited for the end. They did not know about the 50 years of preparation. They did not know about the secret fleet. They did not know about the weapons that had been built in hidden shipyards on the far side of the moon. But President Yuna knew, and she smiled. She addressed the people of Earth in a brief broadcast. "Stay calm," she said. "Go to your shelters and trust your defenders. We have prepared for this day. We will not surrender. We will not kneel. And we will not lose." In the command center, Admiral Doyon gathered his senior officers. Captain Li Jiwu stood at attention. She was young for a captain, only 35, but she was the best tactical mind in the fleet. Lieutenant Yun Sora stood beside her. A woman known for staying calm when everything around her was falling apart. Doyon looked at them all. These were the people who would save humanity or die trying. "The Dominion expects us to panic," he said. "They expect us to beg. They expect us to send diplomats and offer tributes and plead for our lives. That is what every other species has done." He paused. "We are not every other species." He brought up a holographic display showing the solar system. Red dots marked the Dominion fleet near Jupiter. Blue dots marked the visible Earth defense fleet's only 200 ships waiting near Mars. "They see 200 ships," Doyon said. "They think that is all we have. They think this will be easy." He pressed a button, and hundreds more blue dots appeared hidden in the asteroid belt, behind the moon and the rings of Saturn. "They are wrong." Captain Jiwu studied the display. "When do we begin?" "We wait for them to come to us," Doyon said. "We wait for them to get confident. We wait for them to make mistakes. And then we show them what humanity is capable of." In orbit around Jupiter, Commander Voreth watched Earth's pitiful response with contempt. 200 ships. Against 3,000. It was almost sad. He gave the order to advance. The Dominion fleet began moving toward Earth, ready to crush another primitive species under their heel. Voreth had conquered 11 worlds. He had never lost a battle. He had never even been challenged. He had no idea that everything was about to change. The Dominion fleet moved through the darkness of space like a swarm of metal locusts. 3,000 ships, each one a weapon of destruction that had brought entire civilizations to their knees. Commander Voreth stood at the center of his bridge, his forearms clasped behind his back. Watching the small blue planet grow larger on his screens, Earth, such a tiny world, such fragile creatures living on it, his second officer approached with a report. "Commander, the human fleet is moving to intercept. 200 ships, just as our sensors indicated." Voreth made a sound that was his species' version of laughter. 200 against 3,000. "They are either very brave or very stupid." "Perhaps both," his officer suggested. Perhaps Voreth waved one of his hands dismissively. "It does not matter. Open a channel to the fleet. Tell all ships to maintain formation. We will crush them quickly and move on to the planet." The Dominion had a way of fighting wars. It was slow and methodical, like a ritual. Ships would line up in perfect formations. Commanders would exchange formal challenges. Weapons would fire in coordinated waves. There was honor in it, tradition. The Dominion had fought this way for 10,000 years. The humans, Voreth assumed, would try to fight the same way. They would realize they were outmatched. They would break and run. And then the real conquest would begin. Captain Li Jiwu stood on the bridge of the ESS Defiance, watching the Dominion fleet approach. Her ship was one of 200 in the decoy fleet, the fleet that the Dominion could see. The fleet that was designed to look like humanity's only defense. Beside her, Lieutenant Yun Sora monitored the sensor displays. "They're not even trying to spread out," Sora said. "They're staying in one big formation. They really don't see us as a threat," Jiwu said. "That's exactly what we want." In her ear, she could hear Admiral Doyon's voice from the command center on Earth. "Captain Jiwu, begin Phase 1. Draw them in." Jiwu nodded to her helmsman. "Take us forward. Make it look like we're trying to form a defensive line." The human decoy fleet moved into position between Mars and Earth. 200 ships spread out in a thin line, like a wall made of paper trying to stop an ocean. To the Dominion sensors, it looked exactly like what they expected, a desperate, futile attempt at defense deep beneath the city of Seoul. Dr. Choi Min-ho sat in front of a control panel that had taken 20 years to build. He was a thin man with tired eyes and shaking hands. Not from fear, but from excitement. Project Veil was his life's work. For 2 decades, he had developed quantum interference technology. Thousands of satellites had been launched in secret, positioned throughout the solar system. They looked like space debris, like asteroids, like nothing important. But together, they formed a weapon unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Admiral Do-yun's voice came through his earpiece. Dr. Choi, status report. All satellites are in position, Min-ho said. Power levels are optimal. We can activate on your command. Hold for now. Wait until they're fully committed. Min-ho watched his screens and waited. His hands still shook. The Dominion fleet crossed the orbit of Mars. Commander Vorath was growing impatient. The human ships had not attacked. They had not run. They just sat there waiting. This is strange, his second officer said. No species has ever just ... waited. They are paralyzed with fear, Vorath decided. They know they cannot win. They are hoping for a miracle that will not come. He checked the distance to the human fleet. We are in weapons range. All ships prepare to fire. 3,000 Dominion ships powered their weapons. The energy signatures were visible across the solar system enough. Firepower to destroy a continent with a single volley. On the Defiance, Sora's console lit up with warnings. They're targeting us. Weapons hot. Ji-woo opened a channel to the entire decoy fleet. All ships, evasive pattern Delta on my mark. Do not repeat. Do not return fire. 3. ... 1. Mark. The human ships scattered. Not in panic, but in precise, practiced movements. They had drilled this maneuver 1,000 times. The Dominion weapons fired, but the human ships were no longer where they had been. Energy beams cut through empty space. Vorath's eyes narrowed. That was ... unexpected. The humans had moved faster than any species he had ever seen. Their small ships darted and weaved like insects, impossible to track. Recalculate firing solutions, he ordered, and pursue. They cannot run forever. The Dominion fleet moved forward, chasing the human decoys. They were so focused on the hunt that they did not notice the satellites waking up around them. Admiral Do-yun watched the tactical display in the command center. The Dominion fleet was now exactly where he wanted them, deep inside the solar system. Committed to the attack, unable to retreat quickly. Dr. Choi, he said calmly. Activate Project Veil. In Seoul, Min-ho pressed a button. Across the solar system, 2,000 satellites powered on simultaneously. They sent out waves of quantum interference that spread like ripples in a pond. The waves passed through the Dominion fleet, and everything changed. On every Dominion ship, sensors went dark. Communications died. Targeting systems showed nothing but static. Ships that had been in perfect formation suddenly could not see each other, Commander. Vorath stared at his blank screens in disbelief. What is happening? Report? No report came. No officer could tell him anything. His ship was suddenly blind and deaf, floating in the dark. And then new contacts appeared on what remained of his sensors. Not 200 human ships, 1,500, they emerged from the asteroid belt. From behind the moon, from the shadow of Saturn, human ships that had been hiding for years, waiting for this moment. They moved into attack position with perfect coordination. On the Defiance, Lieutenant Sora opened a channel to the Dominion flagship. She spoke slowly and clearly, making sure every word was understood. Commander Vorath, this is the United Earth Defense Force. You gave us one planetary rotation to surrender. She paused and smiled. We only need 10 minutes to win. The COM channel closed. Around the Dominion fleet, 1,500 human ships opened fire. The trap had been sprung. The war had begun. And Commander Vorath finally understood the terrible truth. He had not come to conquer humanity. Humanity had been waiting to conquer him. Space became fire. Human weapons tore through the Dominion fleet from every direction. The massive alien warships, blinded by Project Veil, could not coordinate their defense. They fired back wildly, hitting nothing but empty space and, sometimes each other, Commander. Gyunji led the 7th Strike Wing through the chaos. Her squadron of 50 fast-tack ships moved like a single organism, cutting between the giant Dominion vessels with impossible precision. She had trained for this her entire life. Every pilot in her wing had memorized Dominion ship designs. They knew where the shields were weakest. They knew where the reactors were located. They knew exactly where to hit. Target the command ship's rear thrusters, Yunji ordered. If they can't move, they can't fight. Her pilots obeyed instantly. Concentrated fire slammed into a Dominion destroyer's engines. The ship shuddered, then began to drift, powerless and helpless. The Dominion had never experienced anything like this. For 10,000 years, they had fought wars in a certain way. Their enemies would stand in formation. Their enemies would fight with honor. Their enemies would follow rules. Humans had no rules. On the bridge of the Eternal Conquest, Commander Vorath screamed orders that no one could hear. The quantum interference field had destroyed his ability to communicate with his fleet. Each Dominion ship was fighting alone, isolated, confused. Why can't we restore communications? He demanded. The interference is everywhere, his officer replied, terror in his voice. It's in everything. Our own electronics are fighting against us. Then fix it. We can't. We don't know how this technology works. We've never seen anything like it. Vorath gripped the railing in front of him with all 4 hands. This was impossible. The Dominion had conquered 200 worlds. They had faced every weapon in the galaxy. How could these primitives have created something they could not counter? The answer was simple, though Vorath did not know it. Humanity had spent 50 years studying the Dominion. They had learned that Dominion technology relied heavily on electromagnetic communication. So humans had built weapons that attacked those communications directly. The Dominion had never needed to protect against such attacks because no species had ever thought to try until humanity, deep in the battle. A Dominion carrier drifted with its weapons offline. The ship was 2 kilometers long, carrying thousands of soldiers and dozens of smaller attack craft. It was not destroyed. It was disabled, and that made it a target. Sergeant Han Taiwu stood in the launch bay of a human assault ship, surrounded by 50 Marines in heavy combat armor. They were about to do something that the Dominion considered impossible. They were going to board an enemy ship during active combat. Listen up, Taiwu said to his team. The aliens on that carrier have never fought humans face to face. They don't know what we're capable of. They think we're weak. They think we're soft. He checked his weapon, a rifle designed specifically for close-quarters combat in zero gravity. Let's teach them otherwise. The assault ship accelerated toward the disabled carrier. Dominion point defense weapons tried to shoot them down. But without coordination, the fire was scattered and ineffective. Taiwu's ship slammed into the carrier's hull and burned through with cutting lasers. Air rushed out of the breach. Taiwu and his Marines rushed in. The Dominion soldiers inside were not prepared. They were tall, strong, armed with energy weapons. But they fought like individuals, each one acting alone. Humans fought like a pack. Taiwu's team moved through the carrier's corridors in perfect sync. Where one Marine aimed, another covered. Where one advanced, another protected. They had trained together for years. They knew each other's movements without needing to communicate. The Dominion soldiers fell one after another. They did not understand how creatures so small could be so deadly. They did not understand that humans had evolved as persistence hunters, designed to chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. They did not understand that warfare was in human blood within 15 minutes. Tiwa's team controlled the carrier's bridge. Thousands of Dominion soldiers had surrendered rather than face the unstoppable wave of human Marines. Back in the main battle, Dr. Shin Hai-hoon watched data streams on her screen in a cyber warfare center on Earth. She was not a soldier. She had never held a weapon. But she was about to change the course of the battle with nothing but her mind and her Keyboard. Haihun had spent 30 years studying Dominion computer systems. She had found weaknesses that the Dominion did not know existed. Now, with Project Veil disrupting their communications, those weaknesses were exposed. "I'm in," she said quietly. "I have access to their command frequencies." Admiral Doyen's voice came through her earpiece. "What can you do?" "Everything," Haihun began typing. "I can send orders in their own language. I can tell their ships to do whatever I want." "Do it." "Turn them against each other." Haihun sent her first false order. A group of Dominion destroyers received instructions to attack what they thought was a human position. In reality, it was another Dominion formation. The destroyers opened fire on their own allies. Chaos spread through the Dominion fleet like a disease. Ships that had fought together for centuries now fired on each other. Captains who could not communicate with their commander followed orders that came from nowhere. Not knowing those orders came from the enemy, Commander Voreth watched his tactical display in horror. His fleet was destroying itself. Ships were surrendering. Ships were retreating. Ships were simply drifting, their crews too confused to fight.
How long has it been?
He asked. His officer checked the time. 8 minutes since the battle began. 8 minutes. In 8 minutes, Voroth had lost 40% of his fleet. He had lost more ships in 8 minutes than the Dominion had lost in the last 100 years of conquest. This was not a battle. This was not even a war. This was an execution. Above the chaos, Captain Jiwoo watched from the bridge of the Defiance. Her decoy fleet had rejoined the main force, adding their weapons to the assault. All around her, Dominion ships burned and broke apart. "Admiral," she reported to Doyen, "enemy fleet is in full collapse. Requesting permission to move to Phase 3. "Permission granted," Doyen replied. "End this." Giwu looked at Lieutenant Sora. "Target the flagship. All available ships." Sora nodded and began coordinating the attack. Humanity had waited 50 years for this moment. They had hidden and prepared and planned, while the Dominion conquered world after world. They had watched other species die and sworn it would not happen to them. Now finally, they were proving that they had been right to prepare. The Dominion had expected humanity to fall. Humanity was just getting started. The Eternal. Conquest burned. Commander Voreth's flagship. The pride of the Dominion fleet was dying around him. Human weapons had torn through its shields like they were made of paper. Explosions rocked the ship every few seconds. Emergency lights bathed everything in red. Voroth stood in the center of his ruined bridge, watching his officers scramble to save what could not be saved. He had conquered 11 worlds. He had never even considered the possibility of defeat. Now, defeat was all around him. "Commander," his second officer said, "we must evacuate. The ship cannot survive." "Evacuate to where?" Voroth demanded. "Half our fleet is destroyed. The other half cannot communicate or navigate. Where would we go?" The officer had no answer. A communication screen flickered to life. Somehow, a signal was coming through the quantum interference. A human face appeared, older, gray-haired, with eyes that held no fear. Admiral Park Do-yoon looked at Commander Voroth across the gulf of space. "Commander Voroth," Do-yoon said calmly, "this battle is over. Your fleet is broken. Further resistance will only cost more lives, years, and hours." Voreth stared at the human. "How are you contacting me?" "Our communications are destroyed." "You destroyed them," Doyen said. "We can restore them just as easily. At least to your ship. We wanted to talk to you specifically." "Talk." Voreth's voice cracked with disbelief and fury. "You attack us. You slaughter our fleet, and now you want to talk." "Yes." Doyen's voice remained steady. "Because I want you to understand something. Something important." Voroth said nothing. He was too shocked to speak. 50 years ago," Doyen continued, "we detected your signals. We learned about the Dominion. We watched you conquer the Velith system. We watched you burn their cities and enslave their children. We watched you do the same to the Irani, to the Kreth, to dozens of other species." Doyen paused. His eyes hardened. We watched, and we learned. Learned what? Vorath whispered.
It.
We learned your tactics, your technology, your weaknesses. We learned that you fight the same way every time because you have never needed to change. We learned that you communicate on predictable frequencies because no one has ever disrupted them. We learned that you form the same formations because no one has ever challenged them. Doyan leaned forward. Every world you conquered taught us something. Every species you destroyed gave us knowledge. You thought you were building an empire? In reality, you were training us to defeat you. Vorath felt cold. For the first time in his long life, he felt true fear. What do you want? He asked. I want you to surrender, Doyan said. I want you to order your remaining ships to stand down. And I want you to remember this day forever. Remember that humanity does not kneel. Before Vorath could respond, alarms screamed across his bridge. The ship shook violently. Commander, an officer shouted. The engines are overloading. We're on a collision course with Earth. Vorath looked at his navigation screen. Someone, perhaps an automated system, perhaps a dying officer, had set the flagship on a direct path toward the human planet. If the ship hit Earth, the impact would kill billions. For one moment, Vorath considered letting it happen. If the Dominion could not have Earth, perhaps no one should. Then he looked at Dojan's face on the screen. The human's expression had not changed. He had seen the warning. He knew what was happening. He still showed no fear. It does not matter, Vorath said. Even if we lose here, the Dominion will send more fleets. Larger fleets. You have won a battle, not a war, maybe Doyan said. But we will win those battles too. Because we are humanity, and we never stop fighting. Communication cut off. Captain Nojisu led the final assault on the Eternal Conquest. Her squadron of 30 ships surrounded the massive vessel, trying to disable its engines before it could reach Earth. Target the thruster arrays. She ordered, We need to stop this ship now. Weapons fire pounded the flagship. Explosions blossomed along its hull. But the ship was too big, too heavily armored. It kept moving toward Earth. It's not enough, her sensor officer reported. We're slowing it down, but it's still going to hit the planet. Jisu gripped her command chair. There had to be a way. There had to be something they could do. Then a voice came over the communication channel. A young voice. Calm. Determined. Captain Jisu, this is Pilot Officer Kang Yejin. I have a solution. Jisu looked at her tactical display. Yejin's fighter was a small craft, designed for speed and agility. It was currently positioned directly between the flagship and Earth. Yejin, what are you planning? The flagship's main reactor is exposed on the starboard side, Yejin said. If I can hit it directly with my ship's reactor, the explosion will tear the ship apart. Jisu's blood went cold. That's a suicide run. Yes, Captain. It is. Silence hung over the communication channel. Every officer in the fleet heard the exchange. Every pilot. Every Marine. Yejin. Jesu's voice broke. There has to be another way. There isn't. I've run the numbers. This is the only option. Yejin paused. I'm 23 years old, Captain. I joined the Defense Force because I wanted to protect Earth. Now I can. Please don't take that away from me. Tears streamed down Jesu's face. She wanted to order Yejin to stand down. She wanted to find another solution. But she looked at the tactical display and saw the truth. The flagship was 3 minutes from impact. Millions of people would die, unless one person chose to sacrifice everything. Pilot Officer Kang Yejin, Jisu said, her voice shaking. You are the bravest person I have ever known. Godspeed. Thank you, Captain. Tell my mother I love her. Yejin's fighter accelerated toward the flagship. On the ruined bridge of the Eternal Conquest, Commander Vorath saw the small human ship coming directly at them. What is that pilot doing? He asked. No one answered. No one had time. Yejin's fighter struck the flagship's exposed reactor at full speed. For one instant, there was silence. Then the Eternal Conquest exploded. The blast lit up space like a new sun. The flagship broke into 1,000 pieces, all of them burning. none of them big enough to threaten Earth. On the bridge of her ship, Captain Jisoo wept in the command center on Earth. Admiral Doyon lowered his head. Across the human fleet, pilots and marines and officers watched the explosion and understood the price of their victory. Pilot, Officer Kang Yechin had saved billions of lives. She had given everything so that Earth could survive. The battle was over. 11 minutes and 43 seconds had passed. Since the first shot was fired, the Galactic Dominion had been defeated. The debris of the Dominion fleet drifted through space like fallen leaves after a storm. 3,000 ships had come to conquer Earth. Less than 900 remained, and those were surrendering one by one. Commander Varath had survived the explosion of his flagship. An escape pod had carried him away moments before the end. Now he sat in a human prison cell staring at gray walls, trying to understand how everything had gone so wrong. He had conquered 11 worlds. He had been one of the greatest commanders in Dominion history, and he had been defeated by a species that had learned space travel only 2 centuries ago. The door to his cell opened. Admiral Park Doyon walked in, alone and unarmed. He looked tired. Dark circles surrounded his eyes, but he stood straight and met Vorath's gaze without flinching. "The war is over," Dojin said. "Your surviving ships have surrendered. Your soldiers are being treated according to the laws of war. No one will be harmed." Vorath laughed bitterly. "Laws of war? The Dominion does not have laws of war. We have only victory or death. Humanity is different," Doyon said simply. "Why?" Vorath demanded. "Why would you show mercy to those who came to destroy you?" Doyon considered the question for a long moment. "Because we do not want to become you. We fought to survive, not to conquer. We have no desire to rule the galaxy. We only want to live in peace." Vorath shook his head. "The Dominion will not accept this. They will send more fleets, more soldiers. They will come again and again until humanity is destroyed," Doyon said. "And we will defeat them again and again, for as long as it takes, for as many generations as necessary." He paused. "But I do not think they will come." "Why not?" "Because of what happened today? Because 3,000 of your ships were destroyed in under 12 minutes? Because the galaxy is watching." Doyon's voice hardened. "The Dominion rules through fear. They conquer because no one believes they can be beaten. Today, everyone learned that they can be beaten. Today, the Dominion's power began to crumble." Vorath said nothing. He knew the human was right. On Earth, the sun rose over a world that had come closer to destruction than its people knew. In cities across the planet, celebrations erupted. Humanity had faced its greatest threat and survived. President Kim Yuna addressed the world from the steps of the United Earth Government building in Geneva. Billions watched on Earth and across the galaxy. Dominion communication networks, now under human control, broadcast her words to every species that had been conquered. "People of Earth," Yuna said, "and people of the galaxy. 12 hours ago, the Galactic Dominion came to our world with 3,000 warships. They demanded our surrender. They expected us to fall." She paused and let her words sink in. They were wrong. Behind her, images played on massive screens, human ships in battle, the Dominion fleet in chaos. The final explosion that had saved Earth. "We did not seek this war," Yuna continued. "We did not want to fight. We wanted only to join the galactic community as equals, to explore and learn and grow together. The Dominion chose to come as conquerors instead of friends. That was their mistake." Her voice grew stronger. "To the people of Earth, I say this: be proud. You built the ships that defended us. You created the technology that saved us. You raised the soldiers who fought for us. This victory belongs to every human being." She turned slightly as if speaking to the wider galaxy. "To the species suffering under Dominion rule, I say this: they can be beaten. They are not gods. They are not invincible. What happened here today can happen anywhere. If you find the courage to stand, if you find the will to fight, you can be free. Across a dozen conquered worlds, Beings who had known nothing but oppression heard those words. Hope flickered in their hearts like a candle in the darkness. On the planet Velith, where the Dominion had ruled for 300 years, crowds gathered in secret to watch the human broadcast. When it ended, they began to chant words that had been forbidden for generations. Freedom, resistance, hope on the planet Irani. Soldiers who had been forced to serve the Dominion looked at each other and made silent decisions. Their children would not grow up as slaves. On the planet Kreth, an old woman who remembered life before the conquest smiled for the first time in decades. Maybe she would not live to see her world free, but maybe her grandchildren would. Rebellions did not start immediately, but seeds were planted. The Dominion's image of invincibility had been shattered. The chains they had placed on 100 worlds suddenly felt weaker in soul. Dr. Choi Min-ho stood in his laboratory, surrounded by the technology that had helped save humanity. He was already planning improvements, already thinking about the next generation of defenses. The Dominion might return someday. Humanity would be ready. In a military hospital, Captain Nojisu sat beside an empty bed. Pilot Officer Kang Yejin's body had never been recovered. There was nothing left to recover, but her name would be remembered. Her sacrifice would be honored. Schools would be named after her. Children would learn her story. Jesu held a medal in her hands, the highest honor humanity could give. She would deliver it to Yejin's mother personally. She would tell her that her daughter had saved the world. Admiral Park Do-yeon did not attend the celebrations. He stood instead in a quiet memorial hall, looking at a wall covered with names. 12,000 humans had died in the battle: soldiers, pilots, marines, crews of destroyed ships. Each name represented a family that would never be whole again. He touched the wall gently. "We won," he whispered, "because of you. All of you." Footsteps approached behind him. Lieutenant Yoon Sora stopped beside him, her face solemn. "Admiral," she said, "the President is asking for you. There are decisions to be made about the future. There always are." Do-yeon did not turn away from the names. "Do you know what I keep thinking about, Lieutenant, sir? I keep thinking about the species that came before us, the ones the Dominion conquered. They did not have 50 years to prepare. They did not know what was coming. They died because they had no chance to fight." He finally turned to look at her. "We were lucky, Sora. We had time. We had warning. Most species do not get that." He paused. "Our job now is to make sure no one ever has to face the Dominion alone again." Sora nodded slowly. "An alliance. A coalition of free worlds." "Exactly." Do-yeon began walking toward the exit. The Dominion ruled through division. They kept species apart so they could never unite against them. It's time to change that. Outside the memorial hall, the sun was setting over a world that had been saved. In the sky, stars were beginning to appear, stars that no longer seemed quite so distant or so threatening. Sora watched the sunset and thought about everything that had happened. 24 hours ago, she had been waiting for an invasion fleet. Now she was watching the birth of a new era. What happens now? She asked. Do-yeon looked at the sky. Somewhere out there, other species were watching, waiting, hoping. "Now," he said, "we show them what humanity can do. Not just in war, but in peace. Not just in destruction, but in creation. We have a chance to help build something better. Something that will last long after all of us are gone." Started walking again, and Sora followed. Behind them, the names of 12,000 heroes watched over a world that would never forget their sacrifice. The galaxy had expected humanity to fall. Humanity had risen instead, and nothing would ever be the same.